Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We'll give it just another couple seconds here. We got a bunch of people filing in, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time this afternoon to join us. I've got a great topic today and a couple of great panelists. I'm going to talk about ways to uncover more fixed ops revenue opportunities that, frankly, we all have. Every dealership, every auto group, and frankly, a good amount of manufacturers have a good amount of opportunity up in front of them. And the biggest challenge, which we're going to uncover today, is that you just don't know where that opportunity is. You don't know where to look. And thanks to the help of the panelists today, we're going to be able to provide some answers and some direction on where you go to find those opportunities. So some quick introductions for the panel today. You've got myself, Cody Tomczyk, Senior Vice President here at Force Marketing. We're also welcoming in today Stacy Barga from IHS Markit. She's a Senior Client Partner on the Retail Automotive side. And then Tom Heiser from Gulf States Marketing, SVP of Revenue and Customer Experience. Appreciate you both for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Cody. Excited to be here.
Good deal. So a quick overview for those who aren't familiar with Force and our family of brands, just before we get started here, and kind of tie in, each of the companies underneath our family of brands and how that translates to the retail automotive community. Is we believe that through our offerings on the DigAd side with Force, with variable ops, through first, one-to-one personalized communications with WeDrive Automotive, tied in with the retention and fixed ops loyalty expertise that Gulf States Marketing brings to the table with their 30+ years of experience, and tying that all together through a common data platform in Helix, we can provide the first truly end-to-end solution to a customer experience that isn't one side is, hey, this is the marketing communications and customer communications on the variable sales side, and over here we've got a loyalty program or a retention program through the manufacturer or some other entity. We believe that the customer really wants to have one experience, and we believe that by connecting these brands and these personalized customer communication touch points, we believe we can offer that. Today we're going to explore in some depth, specifically on the fixed ops side, but this really should be, and you'll hear this throughout, this should be feeding both sides of the business. Variable should feed sales, sales should feed, variable should feed fixed should feed variable. And we believe this is a great jump off point to that conversation. So our agenda for today, we're going to cover three main topics. The first topic is how to identify retention program gaps within your OEM, either mandated or subsidized or provided programs. Almost every franchise dealer has some kind of OEM service retention program through a variety of different entities and companies. But the reality is that a lot of those programs, while they are something that the dealer should absolutely opt into, especially if they're free, or subsidized in some capacity, the reality is these programs are built for scale. And Tom's going to uncover through looking at over 200 dealers worth of data, just how big those gaps are and exactly what that can mean from a revenue and profit perspective. Then we're going to jump into loyalty engagement targets that are given by the manufacturer. Most manufacturers, some sort of combination of these, need 2 service appointments within 13 months, need 2 service appointments within 450 days. Tom and the team over at GSM, they've become pretty proficient at identifying exactly who the right audiences are to go after when you want to specifically go after this number and hitting these targets that are given by the manufacturer. And then finally, we're going to jump into the conquest side of customer pay RO opportunities. Stacy is going to bring a good amount of knowledge on the audience front here on just how actually it's become quite easy. What used to be pretty difficult, but it's become quite easy to curate the right audience, and how you can take that audience and really with the click of a button, leverage that audience in an omni-channel way to start to drive conquest customer pay RO opportunities for on-brand customers within your immediate PMA. And then we'll just recap with an action plan, a couple of easy takeaways that you can take into your business, as soon as tomorrow to identify these opportunities. And look, and this is by no means a pitch, but if you all are hearing this and we go through this conversation today, and you're like, man, that sounds great, I just don't know where to start. Myself, Tom, Stacy, we're all here to help. So feel free. We'll give our contact info again at the end. Feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to have a conversation about you and your business opportunities. So I'm going to kick it over to Stacy to shed some light on what's going on in the industry a little bit. And you may look at this and say, look, I thought this was a fixed ops conversation, and we're talking about new car vehicle sales and inventory here, but this is an important jump off point, frankly, for the fixed ops conversation.
Well, it's no big secret that there are multiple shortages and we've got some inventory issues, but as you can see here from this forecast, it is going to be temporary. So we want to really say there's no better time than the present to go ahead and make your fixed ops strategies more efficient. And you can see through 2028, we're able to rebound and restore some growth, but why not go ahead and get some immediate revenue from the service lane and really make that efficient?
Yeah, and I think it's a great opportunity too, right? To be able to say, look, like I've sort of looked at these things in silos. A lot of times my service marketing is a bit of a checkbox, in my overall marketing strategy. And when you've got less cars on the ground, and look, every sales rep at a dealership right now is the best sales rep ever because the grosses are higher than ever before. But that's not necessarily going to last. So why not take this opportunity while things are good from a profitability perspective to take a deeper dive into the fixed ops side of the business and formulate your plan that can be a long-term sustainable plan for when the inventory does rebound and does come back and things quote unquote get back to normal. There's no better time than now to really dive in from a fixed ops perspective. So starting off on the OEM retention program gaps, I'm going to kick it over to Tom here because through my conversations with Tom over the last several months, I've just learned so much from him and the team that services their dealers on the fixed ops side at just how glaring some of these opportunities are from a gap perspective. So Tom, go ahead and jump in here.
Hey, thanks, Cody. Yeah, there are a ton of opportunities on the fixed ops side that are just kind of, money on the table for dealers. Really and truly where we start is, what's the standard OE offering? Every OE out there offers something in terms of either like a fully funded or a subsidized program. And we absolutely recommend that you participate in that. It's good to have the OE relationship, but the OEs do a lot of due diligence in order to vet these programs out, and they do a good job, but they're foundational. And they're really kind of one size fits all because they're really focused on kind of a tier 1 program that they have to cover dealers from Maine to Hawaii. And as we know, not every dealer is built the same. Not every market's the same. At least that's what our customers keep telling us. So what we recommend is a supplemental, or what we call a wraparound program. It provides a lot more flexibility. It supplements what the OEs have. We have kind of tagged it like what AFLAC is doing in the insurance industry. Is you have a foundational coverage, but then we come in and get to fill the gaps. And there are several gaps that we've identified. Actually, there's 4 gaps that we've identified. Those 4 gaps are audience, channel, communications, and customer behavior. So let's jump into the gaps and show some opportunities here. So we've done a lot of research on the OE factory programs, and we've done a lot of research on audiences and data. And what we have found is that that foundational program that the OEs have covers about 41% of a dealer's database. When I tell dealers this is probably one of the most shocking stats that they see, because a lot of times they get told that this is the only thing that they need to do in fixed operations and they're covered. But it's not. Almost 60% of the customers in their database aren't covered. And so it gives you a lot of opportunity to get out there.
Yeah, and this was shocking to me, Tom. And I know you looked at it. We're going to show a sort of a culmination of over 200 dealers worth of data that backs this up. But, sort of just pausing and honing in on this for the audience for a second here. It's glaring to me that, we think that we're 100% covered. But then when we dive into the data, which, data above all else, your data, your DMS data, and we look at that data side by side to say, look, where you think you're covered versus where you're not covered. And you have less coverage than you actually do have coverage, right? There's a bigger gap than you are actually covered for. Right?
Correct.
So you're telling me that by simply just hitting these additional audiences, it's like if you believed that program was a good program to begin with, and you're like, great, I'm covered on that program, simply by reaching these additional people within your DMS that qualify, you would be doing the exact same thing, right? It's just pouring gas on a fire.
Absolutely. It's a huge opportunity. It's a huge revenue opportunity, but it's also, you look at huge retention. And we know that, a loyal customer or a customer that services a vehicle numerous times at a dealership has a way greater likelihood of repurchasing. And that's really what the key is that, we want the service business for sure, but we want the life cycle of that customer to repeat at the dealership. So, it's a lot easier to capture your own customers in the service lane to repurchase than it is to pull them back in.
Yeah, if anything here, like if you hear nothing else besides the incremental revenue that you could pick up simply by talking to people that are not being spoken to by the manufacturer program, this is an easy, downstream sales opportunity by retaining these customers at a greater rate simply by talking to those that are not being talked to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's in marketing, it's reach and frequency, right? And that's what we talk about a lot, especially on the variable side, is reach and frequency. But on the fixed op side, we don't talk a lot about reach and frequency. We talk about how can we save money. And a lot of the times is that the OE programs come out. It's the only thing that dealers are doing. And I've had conversations with multiple dealers, lots of dealers across the nation, lots of different brands. And I say, hey, what's your strategy? And they say, whatever the OE is providing is good enough for us. Or, we're utilizing the foundational program. Well, the OE programs are very heavily dependent on email as their primary source, their primary channel. Some offer direct mail as maybe like a backfill if you don't have an email for your customer, or some offer some additional direct mail if the dealership's willing to pay for it. And so, we highly recommend that we add additional channels. There's opportunities to add direct mail to the communications. Social media has been a fantastic channel for this type of customer, the first party customer. We're getting into video, streaming video, which is fantastic. So there's a lot of opportunities to expand that reach into your customers. What we have found is that when you add direct mail to an email program, we see a 31% lift in response rates. And that is a significant amount. And then when you add digital on top of that, digital and social on top of that, you get an additional 17% response rates. So we know it works. And that's just money being kind of left on the table right now.
Yeah, and it's like the old, if you found the right customer, why stop communicating with them, at the first touch point, right? Like how many, times does somebody check their, inbox, mailbox, their social media account, they're watching streaming programming, they're listening to Pandora, Spotify. If you've identified that it's the right person, why not take that audience and ramp it into these other publishers to create, multiple touch points that allow a person to not only respond, right? That's ultimately the goal, obviously. But a lot of times we're having conversations with people on the fixed side where we're saying, hey, look, it's time for you to service your vehicle. And, did you know that we have these great value props to offer? Did you know that if you're a lost customer who has defected to, an independent big box service retailer, did you know that we've got factory certified technicians and parts? And if you look at it from a price perspective, like we're pretty comparable here. In fact, a lot of times we're better. So why not leverage that omni-channel approach and introduce other mediums like social, video, audio, et cetera, to help tell that story beyond just the direct marketing touch point?
Yeah, and it is interesting you bring that point up, because I had a conversation with a dealer the other day, and I said, how much money are you investing in the front end to bring a customer in? What channels are you in? He said, man, we're in all of them. We fish where the fish are. And I said, okay, great. So once that customer buys the vehicle, you only communicate with that customer by email. Do we know that email brought him in to buy the vehicle? And he said, no, you know what, that's a great point. And so, we spend a lot of money trying to get into all the channels on the front end to drive them in, but we don't do that to keep them. And so, we really recommend that omni-channel approach. But the other aspect is just, we have reach. So we talked about reach, right? Adding additional channels, adding additional data and audience. But then, what's the other side of that? Is frequency. You need to stay in front of your customers. We know the aftermarket is doing a lot of spray and pray. They buy a lot of lists. They are in your mailbox and in your inbox constantly. And so what we recommend is, in that wraparound program, is that you have supplemental communications also. Most of the time in the OE programs, you have a service reminder. You may have a missed maintenance if they miss it. Some have a re-engage or recovery. Every now and then you'll see them have a declined service. Most of them don't. But as you dig into your DMS and you provide some additional data, you have some really great opportunities to stay in front of your clients in terms of how they behave. We recommend highly a mid-interval, and that is from the time of their last service appointment between the time of their next service appointment, is sending them a communications that's not really sales oriented, except for it's a notification. It talks to them about the importance of maintaining their vehicle. It talks about the importance of safety features like brakes, batteries, and tires. And it gives you an opportunity to be in front of your customer between that period, those periods of time that they're not scheduled to be in. And then there's event-based communications. There's, some states still have state inspections. I believe there's about 13 states that are available for state inspections. A lot of customers don't know that they can bring their vehicle back to the dealership for a state inspection. This is a huge defector point for the aftermarket. They do a way better job at pulling people in for state inspections. And then, like vehicle anniversaries and birthdays, those are great personal touch points to be able to offer the customer to come back in for something like a free car wash or a detail, or a percentage off of some accessories that they may have wanted. But there's a lot of opportunity to add communications. Most of the time, OE programs will stop either around somewhere between 12 and 18 months from the time of last service, and they just drop the customer. We can add a lot more different win-backs, different aggressive offers, and really and truly, one of the other things is as you start getting to look at the individual customer based off the mileage of the vehicle, you can start adding sales offers into that service communication to get them to repurchase, because that is the main goal. And then the last one, and I think this is a really important one, is the customer behavior. The majority of the OE program, foundational programs are linear. They have a 6-month time frame. They want customers to come in at 5,000 miles in 6 months. And so what we have done, we've researched this, and through the last decade, we saw that the majority of customers are not time-based customers. When I say time-based, they are, at 6 months, they're hitting their 5,000 miles. Really and truly, 58% of customers are high mileage drivers. So they're hitting that 5,000 miles maybe at 3 or 4 months. And so really and truly, that OE program won't be sending them a relevant communication unless the program is based off of time and mileage. And really and truly, I haven't seen too many. Our program is time and mileage, and this is why we can see this data. But if you look at this chart, the longer it goes, the longer the ownership, the farther away that relevant communication is going to be on those high mileage drivers. So it's extremely important to get in front of the customer with a relevant, timely communication. And this is where we can stop defection to the aftermarket.
And for me, this is two things, right? The first is creating additional points of personalization, right? Like everybody's ownership experience is different. So why should we have the exact same conversation with everybody, right? This is personalization 101. But the other side of this for me is really taking into account that there can be so many different ownership experiences. One of our great partners who I always have some great conversations with about what's going on in the space and the dealerships and the customers, et cetera. We were having a conversation 4 or 5 months ago, and we were talking about, well, how many customers know that it's mileage versus time or time versus mileage coming out of the pandemic where maybe they didn't drive as much? And who knows in those manufacturer programs if those are adapting in real time to understand real time conditions. More people are working from home now. Like, this is evolving. How many of those programs are evolving with it? And so I think when you can start to dive into the data and start to ask the right questions about time, about mileage, about additional communication touch points, about additional audiences that are not being reached, right? Each of those things allow you to understand exactly how much quote unquote coverage you have. And if you need an AFLAC program, right? If you need that supplemental program to drive some incremental, not only immediate ROI, but also setting up the pipeline for that sales ROI downstream. And so, I asked when we were talking about this over the last few weeks, there's a great person on the GSM team that works with Tom. Her name's Lisa, who, look, I don't know what Lisa's title is, but it's got to be some kind of data scientist, because she is so dialed in from a data reporting analysis perspective. And we were talking about, like, hey, what does this mean for a dealer? Like, you guys are doing these programs, you're doing these wraparounds, you're doing these supplemental programs, it's driving ROI, but like, let's take a step back out of like one dealer at a time and look at this from more of a macro perspective. And so I'll kind of sum up here, what she had put together. So her analysis was of just over 200 dealers. The dealers were broken out into 4 different categories comprised of small, medium, large, and extra large. The average lift in what she measures as response, which is essentially an RO, the average lift in response across all 4 of the buckets by adding in a supplemental program on top of a manufacturer program was roughly 33%. That's insane. When we're talking about something that drives as much gross profit percentage-wise as fixed ops does, 33% is, my mind was blown. And so then she broke it down into what that meant from a monthly revenue lift based on each of those different dealer sizes. And I was like, why is every single dealer not doing this? Like, how can a dealer ignore the opportunity, if you're a medium-sized dealer, to pick up another $156,000 a month in revenue? Right? We're talking about, what are they, 60, 65, even 70% gross profit, in the back of the house. talking over $100,000 a year, over $1 million, or excuse me, a month, over $1 million a year in added gross profit simply by finding gaps in your coverage that you just didn't know were there. And this stuff isn't necessarily expensive. It's just about taking a look and trying to find, what you didn't see. It's kind of like, starting to move some things around, look under, each of the stones and see what you can uncover. And I thought this was just super eye-opening. And I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add on that, Tom, before we jumped over to the next section. But this to me was just absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. It's not expensive to do. What we find is that the dealers that are participating in these supplemental programs are getting around somewhere between 44 to 49 to 1 return on their investment. So, I mean, if you gave me $1 and I gave you basically $50 back, I think you do that as long as you could. And so it is a huge amount of money that's right there for the taking, left on the table for those that are just only participating in, that tier 1 program.
Yeah, I think the hardest part for a dealer, if I were to guess, is where do I start, right? Where do I go? And your DMS, is a spot you want to start. You can certainly talk to your after sales rep with your manufacturer. You can certainly talk to the provider of the OEM program. But again, just as sort of a consultative offer, we're all in this industry, in this business together. Certainly feel free to reach out to Tom and his team on this front, because I think, just one look, under the hood, and I think we're going to find, a bunch of dollars just lying around there, not only for today from a fixed perspective, but also downstream from a variable perspective. So switching gears here into our next topic, OEM retention targets. These are, we're going to highlight one manufacturer in terms of what this looks like and how it's calculated. We are going to talk about another manufacturer from a case study perspective briefly, but every OEM has some iteration of this. There's different implications on what it can mean for your business. And so I'll kick it back over to Tom here to talk about this one example in particular, which is the Toyota side of things.
Yeah, and these are interesting metrics, like you say. Every OE has them. They're calculated a little different, but they're all based around retention. Toyota has theirs called loyalty and engagement. They break down their segmentation by 4 different segments: active, inactive, non-engaged, and cross-active. Their quote-unquote TLE, or Toyota loyalty and engagement metric, is really only focused on those first 2, which is active and inactive customers. The key to this is, it's customers within a dealer's PMA or whatever the marketing guidelines for that OE is, provides that those are the guidelines of that area which your service is covered. The key to this is that, most time, dealers are chasing that number, and they don't really know how to do it because they don't know the formulas. We take a lot of pride in understanding what the formulas are. We get our, Lisa, who you mentioned, is data guru. She loves to dig into this stuff, and she digs in and really finds opportunities within these programs. And, they're very small in terms of volume when we really look at them, but they're really important to the manufacturer, which makes it really important to the dealership. For Toyota, for example, is, your TLE percentage has to be 5% over whatever region average it is in order to qualify for their President's Award, which is it's a prestigious award, and most dealers are really, running after it. But you have to have a strategy to go get it. And, a lot of times what we see is that, dealers will say, hey, let's just go after our active dealers or our active customers and get them in. And they want to do it as cheap as possible. And it's not usually as effective as possible. And so what we recommend is, number one, make sure you have the audience correct. And so, for a TLE driver for Toyota, what we recommend is a big focus on that first group, that active group that's 7 to 12, and then the purple group, which is your inactive, which is 13 to 24. Be aggressive. this is a targeted market audience. So be very aggressive, do a price, not a discount offer. That's a big key, because most of the time what we have found is price offers drive a lot better return than a discount, because people, customers know what they're paying for. 20% off what is still a question.
Yeah, and I think this is, it's important to note here, Tom, right? Like, you're not saying, hey, we have to get aggressive offers for every segment that we're talking to in the fixed ops, audience pool, right? This is a very specific, very intentional effort where you're pairing a very aggressive offer. Is that right?
It's correct. And dealers are trying to be uberly aggressive. We've had a couple of conversations with some of our dealers that are doing this, and they've said, hey, we'll go down to 99 cents an oil change, or is there a way that we can give a $100 Starbucks coupon, or we don't want to violate any of the OE regulations, but they're really thinking extremely aggressive in terms of how to drive this target market in. We still need to make money on these customers, so we're not recommending necessarily you have to go down to 99 cents. But it just shows that how important it is for customers to be driven back into the dealership, and that the goal is to impact that percentage to be within the top whatever 45% it is for Toyota in your region.
Yeah, and then this is obviously a very important strategy at the dealership level. I want to give a sort of a related example of something that we've been working on with another manufacturer up in the Northeast over, frankly, the last, we're coming up on 10, 11 months now. And the goal of this campaign was to generate, obviously, additional parts and service revenue, but really to start to gain back some of those same segments, right? Those lost and inactive customers, like find opportunities for new customers, and then not only just increase the awareness in those dealer service areas, but also introduce the idea of accessories and parts, and really looking at all the different revenue streams together. So here's an example of this campaign that we ran to a bunch of different audiences, covering a bunch of different brands underneath the umbrella. The audience segmentation started as inactive customers of 11 months with over 11 months with no activity, a preventative maintenance list, potential accessory purchasers, and then new customers. But then what we did was we said, okay, if we believe that those are the right people, let's go find more people just like them. Like, if we believe those are the right people, let's find the ones that have also visited, and this is going to segue in a second into the conversation with Stacy. Let's find the ones that have defected, that are owners of those vehicles, but have defected to the big box stores, where we can overlay additional data sources based on location history, purchase history, et cetera. And I think the proof is in the pudding here, right? And I draw you to both of these, but certainly to the bottom one. 7 months into the program, and there are a good amount of channels in full disclosure, and several companies participating in the gross ROI column. But when you look at the target audience column, those were audiences that were exclusively targeted from these strategies that we laid out here. And to Tom's point about, if I gave you, you gave me $1 and I gave you back 50, when would you stop? Like, if you gave me $283,000 across, 170 dealerships over the span of 7 months, and I gave you back $14.5 million of service revenue, like, literally, when would you stop? And so this is something that has certainly impact at an individual dealer level, where you just want to understand exactly what the goals are and understand the audiences, and then put a strategy together. But this also has scaled reach across a manufacturer for a region that allows you to really make just a crazy positive impact relative to the goal that you were looking to achieve. All right, now shifting gears over to the CONQUEST side. I have had a ton of conversations with Stacy over the last couple of months on this topic, because I am of the belief that a lot of dealers are super fat and happy right now, which is fine. That's fair, right? Like, everybody's a great salesperson all of a sudden when, you know, you're making whales on every deal. You know, my service lane is busy, et cetera. Like, that's great. But what are we doing to have a long-tailed strategy of making sure that we're not only retaining all the customers, right? Not just the 41%, but the 59%, as Tom pointed out, you know, making sure that our loss and actives are covered, et cetera. But what are we doing to make sure that we are getting additional customers in, and we're doing it through the service lane via on-brand service marketing? Right? Every dealer that I talk to at some point or another wants to implement Conquest marketing strategies into their variable side. It is really difficult to get someone to defect brands, even though defection and loyalty saw, what was it, a 2% dip, Stacy, year over year from Q1 2020 to 2021?
Yep, 2 percentage points.
Right. But it's still really hard to get them to convert. Why do we wait for that, you know, once every 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 year transaction to try and convert them into our business at our dealership, versus all the different service touch points that they have to have in between? Those are all opportunities. So I'll kick it over to Stacy here to give you some insight into how they look at the data world, how they have really started to take something that was a bit, I don't know, big and messy, and like, you know, OEMs were really the only ones grabbing at this kind of data and trying to use it in this way. And they've really shrunk it down so that not only companies like a Force Marketing can use it, but even dealers can use it directly as well.
That's right. So we talk a lot about first-party data and third-party data. So first-party, just a reminder, it's your own data. If you're pulling it out of the CRM or the DMS and slicing and dicing it the way that you think that the user would like to see it, but you're not necessarily sometimes using it in the right places, on Facebook, on Google, a lot of what Tom was talking about just a bit ago. And then the third-party data, so you're getting that from multiple unknown sources, and you want to use it, and you are, but might not be cleansed regularly. So what we like to talk about is the second-party data, and that's the Polk Automotive by IHS data. So it's an extension of your own data, and it's cleansed regularly, and it's from trusted sources. And we can go to the next slide to kind of roll back what is second-party data. So as you know, Polk's been around for a long time, but we do retain 30 years of the transaction data based on ROs, registrations, even personal transactions that go on, and it's modeled after 125 million plus households. So once you utilize this data that's tried and true and is segmented down to where you can target Stacy, who you know hasn't had service B on her car and she's well overdue, you can get right to Stacy with that ad for service B, and then go find more people who look like Stacy with similar mileage. That way you're being really efficient with whatever type of campaign you're running.
And I think that's like super important though. Like, one of the things you hit on there, Stacy, where you said, like, you know, the third party and kind of the unknown parts of the third party data world. And I think where a lot of marketers, a lot of dealers get into, I don't want to say trouble, but a little bit into, you know, the pool of where they're starting to waste some dollars, is they want to go into the third party space and they don't know what they're getting. Like, they don't have the visibility to know what they're getting. And even if they have some direct sources, well, then you've got all these disparate sources, and this person says this is what in-market means, and this is what in-market means, and this is what this is. And then, like, oh, I'm going to rely on this publisher to tell me versus the data source to tell me. And part of what I like about what you pointed out here is, oh, this is exactly how we curate these audiences. This is exactly what they mean. This is exactly how we define them. And this is exactly how you can, which we're going to show in a second here, is exactly how you can make them actionable.
And last but not least, we have another tool that pulls it back through and lets you know if a registration was actually pulled from that audience, or if we'll give you an actual buy rate on those audiences. So the concept of audience layering is being used by some folks. I know that you guys use it, Cody. It's super strategic and fantastic. So what you're doing is taking audiences that you know someone owns this exact vehicle or owns this exact make and targeting them with a message for tires, for an oil change, for air conditioning service, when you know that they should be at that point. But you can get a little further down the funnel. We do offer those financial segments. We have a partnership with TransUnion, and we do offer the in-market segments. You can get creative. Some folks are trying the in-market segments for fixed ops. So if you might be in the market for a car, maybe there's something wrong with your car, and we can trace it back and see, oh, we haven't had an oil change in 2 years. So you can get super creative with your audience layering. And we have an example here that we actually pulled for the AC system. Oops. So there we go. So the AC system here, we have, like you said, a price on this service, and the two audiences that were layered were owners of this brand vehicle with that exact model. And these are really getting crazy results. I think a great one to share with all of you is that we ran a test just recently with 20 Stellantis stores, and tracing it back through the match tool, we can account for 75% of all that service business came from these audiences that were being used. So that's huge. Show you guys a little snapshot of our new tool. It makes all of this very seamless. You can utilize one of our partners, or you can just log on to polkdealermarketing.com. You're able to select the audiences yourself, and at the end, it gives you a household count. So you know for direct mail, for social media, and we'll continue to add channels throughout this year. But you can actually see the audiences and how many folks are in there, and then it'll trace back through to that match tool that I told you, and you'll know what happened with your audience. And there are some more audiences coming soon. We do expect to drive more business through parts and service. We want to make sure that we are targeting folks who need particular maintenance. I liked that graphic earlier because you showed the touch points of when you would be targeting these folks. Well, this audience will be sitting there and will be refreshed every few weeks so that you know if someone actually did convert, that you're not targeting them again.
Yeah, and I think I rearranged some slides on you there. So let me bounce back for just a second here, just kind of give you a summary, I know, of what you were talking about here, Stace.
Yes, so this is the Polk Dealer Marketing Tool. It makes the use of these audiences super seamless. So you can log here, anybody can log in and play around. Purchase isn't necessary to check out the audiences. And it has a direct integration. So if you were to want to utilize some aftermarket audiences in Facebook, you sign up and they drop them right into your Facebook ID, and you can run whatever ad you like. And this is available 24/7 and has that matchback tool.
Yeah, and again, like, I'm sort of repeating myself a little bit here, but what I really like about where this industry is evolving from a data perspective is we're not only making it easier, but we're sort of breaking down the sort of walls and the hidden shrouds of, like, okay, what data source and who is it and how much does that data cost and who's marking what up and whatever and all that stuff. And it's like, no, look, these are the right audiences. We believe these are the right audiences. You need to activate these audiences. And I like how we're making it super easy for partners like a Force or even the dealer to do themselves, to say, look, if these are the right audiences and we believe it, well, great, let's grab them and let's make them as actionable as humanly possible, and let's measure the results. And this is, certainly, as you pointed out in your diagram, of like the first, second, third, like, yeah, you still need to take care of your first party segments on all these channels as well. This is a great way to make these actionables. And I thought it would be valuable to lay this out in a little bit of a visual grid, and I'll walk through a couple of examples of the data layering that Stacy was talking about before, where you start with an IHS market owner audience, right? So the one she showed before was brand and model, right? Make and model. And then you start to overlay additional information, and whether that's your data location partners like a Place IQ, purchase transaction data with like Visa or MasterCard, TransUnion, etc. You can now start to understand, and I'll show you like some real life examples here. Like in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, give me Toyota owners who have visited a auto parts and service center in the last 6 months, or 8 months, 9 months, 12 months. We personally find the sweet spot to be around 6 months. But give me those people. And now I can have a very personalized, tailored conversation to those people, because those people have defected to the independents. They've defected to the Meinekes and the Midas and the Costco's of the world, right? With those people, maybe it's price focus, and I need to have a piece of content that is a dare to compare, right? Like, did you know that we have factory certified parts and technicians, and take a look at some of our prices compared to some of these retailers, these independent retailers in the space. Or maybe we want to look at it, like I said, from a purchase side, right? So the same market, same brand, but in this scenario, we want to overlay using Visa data to say, okay, give me those Toyota owners in the DFW market who have, via their transaction history, they're either frequent or high spenders in auto service and repair shops. Like if I'm a Toyota dealer in the DFW market, these are exactly the types of customers that I want to be communicating with. You're telling me these people spend frequently and at high numbers on repairing their vehicle? Like that's my ideal customer. How do I get that customer in and then go find more customers just like them? And in this example here, I pulled Toyota for the make, but you can get more granular, as Stacy pointed out, right? We can grab the top volume models, and we can get really creative and really understand exactly how to not only find the right customer, but then pair the right message with them to create that personalization at scale. One tool that we've built here that's pretty cool to be able to do this. So this is something where you can take these IHS audiences or your first party audiences as an example, and you can activate these audiences using our Service Drive product. So quick shameless plug here on our Service Drive product, but pretty cool way to tell a story. And so what you're seeing here is an always-on. What you're seeing here is an always-on why buy video, and you're seeing it paired with personalized service offers. So with, as an example, if Stacy was an inactive customer and we had a set of offers that she would get, normally via email or direct mail or maybe even, Facebook, well, we would serve her a set of offers with this why buy video. But if Tom was a lost customer and we wanted to get more aggressive with the offers with Tom, we could then increase those offers and personalize them to that audience. So everybody has the exact same reason to come do business from a why buy. In this scenario, it's touchless service. Another scenario, it might be demos and loaders and pickups and drop-offs. And another scenario, it might be dare to compare pricing. But the ability to personalize the service offers and the content to those audiences at scale, whether you're doing the first party audiences that Tom talked about or the second party, I swear, Stacy, I'll never call them third party again. Second party audiences that Stacy was talking about, it allows you that opportunity to bring them all together. And finally here, just 2 quick points on this, right? What I want to illustrate, this is using the MOPAR example. I'll use another example on the next screen here. What's most important is that you create a creatively aligned strategy that is omni-channel. So whether you're activating, to Tom's earlier point, on your OEM program and you're adding additional channels, whether you are activating Stacy's second party audiences, for make model defectors who are servicing at big box retailers or independent retailers, you can reach them on direct mail, you can reach them on email, you can reach them on social. You can reach them on streaming audio, dynamic video on OTT, on YouTube, text messaging. You've got a wealth of channels at your disposal. The usage of the channels certainly is relevant. You got to grab the right audience and you got to make it creatively aligned, and then tell your story. Figure out what those 1, 2, 3 different audience segment stories are that you have. Use as many dynamic tools as possible so that you can do this at scale. Because if you had to create one ad for Stacy and one ad for Tom and one ad for fill in the blank, you're going to be there all day long. And so this is doable. You just got to start to ask the right questions and understand who it is that you want to talk to and understand what it is you want to tell them. So let me recap here from an action register perspective. So the first thing we recommend is to evaluate your current OEM retention program. This is something that I think bugs a lot of dealers. It certainly bugs a lot of groups. I know a lot of the larger groups that I talk to. Imagine doing this for one OEM and how difficult that is. But if you had 5 OEMs under your umbrella, 15, 25 OEMs under your umbrella, and you're trying to understand, okay, I want all my customers to have the same experience, but Toyota does it this way, and Kia does it this way, and Mercedes does it this way, and Honda does it this way. It's really difficult to understand that landscape, but you got to start asking questions. Ask them of your manufacturer rep, ask them of your provider, or again, feel free to ping Tom and his team and ask them to take a look at it from their lens and their perspective with, certainly no obligation to do any business. Next thing, the OEM loyalty targets. Identify the math, identify the formulas, and then identify the audiences, and let's come up with a plan that aggressively targets those segments specifically. Again, all by themselves, they don't get the same treatment as everybody else does because we are talking to them with a very specific purpose. They hit a very specific number. And then finally, find the right conquest customers and start to tell your story. It's not enough to rest on your customers that you have. You do have to conquest. I urge dealers to really think about conquest beyond just the variable side to say like, well, I want to grab Toyota market share from this Toyota dealer. Or I want to conquest, cross-sell this Honda dealer to my Toyota. Think of it on an everyday basis about having all of those conversations, a million different opportunities over a span of time through personalization, through value building, where you can get them in and starting to experience what it's like to do business with your dealership. And then again, they're there for you down the road to have those sales opportunities. So I'll end with that and leave up our info here as we conclude the webinar. I want to thank Stacy and Tom for taking the time to jump in and have this conversation today. I've been getting more and more. I've been so on the variable side for so long and getting so much deeper on the fixed side. I just continue to learn about all these opportunities that are right there for the taking. So again, we're here. I urge you to, if you got a question, feel free to jump in and take down these email addresses and feel free to fire away with any questions. We're here to help. And with that, we thank you for your time and attention today, and hope everybody has a great rest of the week and has a great July. Thank you.